Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. Hopefully, all of that nonsense has been cleared up. Now, let's address something right now, because there's some confusion. Jules revealed footage of Kaylee and Madison being picked up at the grub truck, and from the looks of it, it is a black Toyota Prius they hopped inside. Well, Showalter claimed they were picked up by a silver sedan. We left a comment sharing our thoughts about this conundrum. Quote, Ponder. If the vehicle was a dark-colored Prius, then this same Jack Showalter lied to MPD because he said they were picked up in a silver sedan at the grub truck. Now, we know MPD drove a silver sedan nicknamed the MPD school car, which was the Ford Fusion. Can you please address Showalter's interview with Officer Hathaway? Surely you've examined that. Unquote. Just so we're covering the bases, and if Jules hasn't gotten around to that interview, here it is. Quote, at about 24-6 hours, I talked to Showalter on the phone. Showalter essentially said the same thing he said in the voicemail he left. Showalter said he was out with Maddie at the corner club until around 2:30 hours. Showalter said several times he did not know who the, quote, other girl was with them that night. On a side note, there was whispers about the previous footage of Kaylee walking down the street with Madison and Showalter, where some felt it was something off with her legs, indicating the footage was edited. Well, ironically, Jules mentioned this in the recently released footage of them leaving the Gerb truck. Might be why Showalter said he didn't know the other girl because she was invisible. Just a joke. Well, somewhat. Anywho, Showalter described the girls getting into a, quote, silver sedan after they got food at the grub truck, unquote. Now, unless Showalter is colorblind, these are two different vehicles picking the girls up. What else is new? There are two private drivers, right? Eric Gower and Batman. So, go figure. Now, is the vehicle dark silver? Nobody even says dark silver because that color doesn't exist. That would be described as dark gray more than anything. Showalter wouldn't say silver. He would just say dark gray or just a dark-colored sedan. I couldn't tell if it was black or dark gray, but it was a darker tone, you see? He said a silver sedan, meaning the color silver stood out to him. Speaking of gray, it was none other than Gray Hughes who Jules examined the footage from. Boy, now that's someone who you shouldn't give any credibility to. In addition, you do know that Hughes is in the animation/editing field, right? And he's always getting his hands on video footage. Something to ponder. Now, some would suggest that Showalter lied and said it was a silver sedan, but then why would he lie? That's the first question. Also, why so specific with the color? Is it possible that he knew Moscow PD had a, quote, school car that was a silver sedan? But why would he describe that vehicle? And if many would say you're jumping to conclusions about this, well, it's more logical than Showalter jumping from a black Toyota Prius to a silver sedan, right? So we make more sense here. Here we go again, trying to figure out the oddities.
A silver sedan. Fits the description of the unmarked cruiser that night, which was a silver Ford Fusion, which was in the neighborhood approximately from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., and specifically so-called patrolling the neighborhood where the victim stayed from 2 a.m. to about 2:50-ish. Speculation. Has Kaylee dating one of the officers? Or it was a dark-colored Toyota Prius that picked the girls up. Let's be honest here. Whenever they released footage years later, it's for a reason. Meaning, this very footage could have been released around the same time the other footage was released. You see, everyone has to read between the lines. Before the conviction, none of this had been released, including the alleged path Kohberger took. After the conviction, they've just dumped everything out there to the public. The same so-called sensitive evidence they felt needed to be concealed. In that footage, is there anything that warranted it to be concealed? Is it the identity of the vehicle? Oh, the private driver didn't want his vehicle to be spotted, which may lead to him being harassed and accused of being the murderer. Well, he should have stayed anonymous in his police interview then, that being Eric Gower. So the footage doesn't compromise anything. If it doesn't compromise anything, why conceal it? Perhaps it's because this footage was edited. Some even suggested that it appeared so odd that it indicates the entire case was a psychological operation. In other words, well, this was recorded at some point after the alleged murders took place, with the same individuals just playing the role out. Always keep your thinking caps on, my friends. It's not impossible. But back to Showalter for a moment. The vehicle in that footage is definitely not silver. So why did he describe it as such? Can anyone explain it? We want to hear from everyone. See what you guys think. Because we believe, based on his description, it would have been Kaylee's alleged lover boy driving the MPD school car, a silver sedan, that night, and was in the neighborhood around the same time they reportedly arrived back home. Again, so everyone understands why we're going this route. The vehicle in that footage is a dark-colored, or even black, Toyota Prius. Heck, even if it's dark gray, Showalter wouldn't describe it as a silver sedan. But then again, it is a dark-colored vehicle that we see Madison and Kaylee hop into, right? Are our eyes deceiving us? Is that what we really see? Okay, so let's do an overview of all the footage that has been released so far, at least from what the Chaos is aware of. Well, you have the original Grub Truck footage. You have the sidewalk footage. You had the Corner Club footage. We have this footage of the pickup. You have footage of the alleged path Kohberger took that night. You have the footage from the neighbor's security camera timed from that alleged path starting around 3:30 a.m. We even saw the so-called DoorDash driver, Molly the Magician. Yes, we still call her that. We see her arriving, even getting out of her vehicle. All of this had been released around the time Kohberger was basically going to take the plea deal. Let's be honest.
Don't forget the Costco's footage. They hadn't released that until around that time also.
You have, of course, the Linda Lane surveillance, which wasn't officially released, rather leaked out. And screenshots of the security camera footage timed at 1:56 a.m. and the gas station screenshot timed at 3:45 a.m. What is missing here? Well, those two. No footage from the time frame Kaylee and Madison arrived back home, around 2 a.m. And no footage from the gas station showing that white vehicle speeding down the road. And within the time frame of the neighbor security footage, we would also see when the MPD school car was so-called patrolling in the neighborhood. Something is being hidden in this segments of footage. And if you know the Chaos, what's being hidden is conflicting footage that makes even the guilters question if Kohberger's vehicle was even there that night. Sherlock Romes asked the very question we were going to get to. Oh yes, we had that on the list of reports we were going to cover. The cherry picking of footage from that security camera proves there is definitely something Moscow PD didn't want the public to see. What segment of footage did they show Olivia that provided a screenshot of the footage timed at 1:56 a.m.? If there's a screenshot, then the footage exists. Yet we want people to also factor in Batman into this equation. Oh yes, haven't forgotten about this individual. He was interviewed by Law and Crime and resides in Pullman, Washington, stayed 1,200 feet from Kohberger's doorstep, and is retired. He even went on to say that now, when he drops girls off, they ask him if he could step in for a moment to check the home out and make sure everything was safe. This is how he got the nickname Batman, if anyone was wondering about that name. Yes, he went from being so scared to enter the driveway of the victims that night, as he was worried about being robbed and such, to after the Brittle massacre, he somehow didn't get even more frightened. No, he gained balls of steel and risked his life by checking the homes out for any threats. Does this sound like Eric Gower to you? Absolutely not, and that was a lie. Anyway, but mainly because Gower doesn't stay in Pullman and isn't retired. So you have someone being interviewed by Law and Crime pretending to be the private driver that night. Now bring this all the way back to that footage with the black Toyota Prius and just think, who in the world is that? There are two individuals being represented as the private driver, Eric Gower and Batman. There are two vehicles being represented as the private driver. One, a black Toyota Prius, and a silver sedan. Some may say, come on, we all see that the girls got into a dark-colored Prius. There's nothing left to talk about. Oh, yes, there is. Showalter made sure of that.
Now we have to address a comment someone left, and it jogged our memory regarding the security footage. Quote, I saw an interview with SG a couple months ago, and he said Olivia got a hold of the 11-12 footage before MPD, not after, and that made the LEOs very nervous, as in, Ellie's narrative was at risk, unquote. We do recall this now that it was brought back up, that Olivia had obtained that footage, but I doubt she obtained it before Moscow PD, because they collected all surveillance in that area within a few days, remember? I believe it was the next day they obtained the neighbor's security footage, and then the footage from the landlord of the apartments on Linda Lane. Nevertheless, she did get her hands on that footage, we do know that. We asked back then as to why did they leak out a screenshot timed at 1:56 a.m. instead of leaking out the actual footage, like the Linda Lane footage had been leaked out. And you see, that was the suspicious activity. They leaked out the Linda Lane surveillance to suggest it was Koberger's vehicle spotted circling the apartments, but they didn't leak out the previous path the vehicle would have traveled, being from Queen Road, entering and departing. That footage came out sometime later, which was gradually dumped out by Moscow PD, and of course mainstream media started dumping it out there, but it wasn't leaked out. Now, if Olivia had that footage, and we know Moscow PD had it, we have to question why nothing has been released during the time frame Kaylee and Madison was dropped off by this dark-colored Prius. What's the big deal? The vehicle just dropped them off, right? Had no problem showing the grub truck footage of them getting picked up by the private driver. Why not show them arriving back home? Something is in that footage that Moscow PD doesn't want the public to see. Once again, so we're on the same page, the grub truck footage shows Kaylee and Madison being picked up by a dark-colored Toyota Prius. Yep, picked up, and then the vehicle drives off. Showalter is right there on the sidewalk, observing them depart, so he sees what color the vehicle is, which appears to be a black Toyota Prius. Now, why would he tell Officer Hathaway that the girls were picked up by a silver sedan? We checked the colors of the Prius, and yes, they do have dark gray colors, specifically winter gray metallic. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and suggest that Showalter wouldn't identify this as a silver sedan. He would describe it as, well, gray or darker toned. What do you guys think? Because this color would appear darker in that footage, even black. But Showalter's description would be more along those color tones, not silver. Now it's subjective as to why silver sedan is in quotation marks. It could be Hathaway confirming that's the description Showalter gave, or it could be the description Showalter gave based on vaguely knowing the color of the vehicle. Like, I think it was like grayish, it had like a silver shiny look to it. So what color tone do you think it was? Was it lighter, darker, in between? It looked dark gray, but it was shiny looking. Hathaway just said, well, let's just say it was a silver sedan. Is this possible? I think Hathaway would have described it as dark gray or just a dark-colored sedan. The description would be generalized as gray, or dark-colored. It wouldn't be described as silver. Maybe we're overanalyzing, maybe Showalter described it as silver, but there is another silver sedan that is significant. And there wouldn't be any confusion about the color neither, as it's literally a silver sedan. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Showalter observed the vehicle as being silver or grayish, which is the winter gray metallic color, and just said it was a silver sedan. Okay, but the time. Yep, there's a problem with the time in that footage. It's already made its rounds throughout, as many believe the footage was bogus. In the upper left-hand corner, the time is November 13th, 9:41 p.m., which is Sunday night. And at the bottom center, it has the time everyone assumes the girls were there at around 1:41 a.m., which would be Sunday morning. Now, we're not going to echo what many believe this indicates. Rather, we're going to point out something else. These comments are from Christy Chaos's video. Quote, Eric Gower drives a silver Prius. It's mentioned as silver in several docs. The car that the girls get into is blue. And funny because two other people in the police report said they saw the girls get into a blue sedan, which I always thought was odd. Now I see with my own eyes it is in fact blue. This whole case is ridiculous. Unquote. Agree. Way back in the beginning, it was said that some girl picked them up in blue car, so I'm digging to see what I can find. Unquote. Quote, Jumper guy said it was a blue car. Unquote. Now, I don't really know where to begin. Okay, so Eric Gower allegedly drives a silver Prius. We assume this is a vehicle he uses for that service with Uber. Let's not get swept away with this specific claim, though, because there's also another individual who claimed to be the private driver that night, being Batman. But if others claim the girls got picked up in a blue vehicle, then which vehicle are we to track? I think the most evident thing here is that footage has been tampered with. That's at least something to build on. Which brings us to another comment left on the Birdies video examining the grub truck footage.
Quote, Kaylee and Maddie look like they were added to that. That doesn't even look real. Unquote. Now, this theory is, well, it was a psychological operation. Definitely possible. The chaos has always kept this relevant in our analysis. Every now and then, we remind everyone that this case is not exempt from being seen as a psychological operation, but we offer another reason for your broader scope of the case. There is no evidence that Eric Gower drives a silver sedan. If someone has a photo of his vehicle, feel free to provide the evidence. Remember, Gower's wife works for Moscow PD. Another thing you have to remember is this was a cover-up. Eric Gower will be depicted as the private driver. An Uber account could have been set up after the fact, all to protect the fact that Kaylee's relationship with law enforcement would be extremely suspicious in her death. The vehicle departs around 1:52 a.m. and allegedly arrived back in the neighborhood around 1:56 a.m. Now, from Friendship Square, which is where the grub truck was located, to the neighborhood, it's about 5 minutes travel time. So the time is pretty much accurate, but the private driver claimed he dropped the girls off around 1:45 a.m. Oh, let me correct that. Moscow PD claimed they arrived back home around 1:45 a.m. Then Olivia corrected this time to 1:56 a.m. Oh, wait, where did Moscow PD get that time from, you ask? Eric Gower, who was the private driver, correct? Are we to believe Gower didn't track his time of service, picking the girls up, which was arriving around 1:45 a.m., then departing at 1:52 a.m., and then arriving around 1:56 a.m. in the neighborhood? Surely he tracked the time, even though he was off duty after 1 a.m., right? So, why the different time? Olivia is like, hey guys, you better report the correct time. We don't want people finding out it wasn't Eric Gower. Yeah, Olivia was a bit pissed off, wasn't she? Because the private driver couldn't be exposed for having a different time than what the alleged security footage displayed. And this is where Batman comes into play here, because we have always suggested Eric Gower was not the private driver that night. Not only is there conflicting reports of the time, but there are conflicting reports of the individual depicted as the private driver. We have to focus on this suspicion. Again, the individual interviewed by Law and Crime claimed to live in Pullman, Washington, stayed 1,200 feet from Kohberger's doorstep, was retired and just Ubered to stay active, lived with his wife and a dog. This is not, I repeat, this is not Eric Gower. Now, we exposed this early on, and now it's starting to reveal itself even more now. We ask everyone the same question we asked back then. If everyone believed it was Eric Gower that was the private driver, then why would someone else pretend, yes, pretend, to be the private driver? It's clearly not Eric Gower being interviewed, yet they're claiming to be the private driver for Kaylee and Madison. We'll wait a moment for something logical to hit your brains. Well, the only logical explanation, as we pointed out, is it proves Eric wasn't the private driver, by default, you see. Because think deeper about this issue. You have someone being interviewed, claiming to stay in Pullman, Washington, 1,200 feet from Kohberger's doorstep, was retired with a wife and dog, just doing Uber to stay active and have supplemental income. And that's just his so-called personal bio. What about the obvious fabricated accounts of the very night he allegedly took the girls home? That was absurd. And let's touch on this theory. We don't think this was Eric basically changing his identity and such, because he didn't want to be publicly identified in the interview. If he was well known anyway, there wouldn't be a need to stay anonymous or even lie about where he stayed and all. He seems like a straightforward dude. All of that would be unnecessary. He would just reject the interview if it was that serious. But the accounts were suspicious. Oh, he didn't pull up to the driveway completely because that's how people get robbed. Oh, really?
Didn't you know of the housemates? Weren't you like a well-known driver in town? Surely everyone recognized your vehicle in the neighborhood. Now, who would want to rob such a great person who has done so much for the youth? And wasn't the neighborhood so safe that people often left their homes unlocked? Don't mind the chaos. It's bringing back memories of that bogus interview. And the craziest part is that he claimed that when he drove people home after the massacre, they asked him to step inside to check, and guess what Mr. Frady Cat did? He goes inside and checks everything out for them. Wow, guess he's a superhero now, huh? It's so absurd, trying so hard to sound like a good person, he overdid it. Helping damsels in distress, hence fucking Batman. Who was this person who was interviewed by Law and Crime? If there is someone pretending to be the private driver, then there wasn't an actual private driver by default. We mean a genuine private driver. Whoever took the girls home was a part of the plot. We're wired a bit differently, so we think outside the box sometimes. We suggest that Eric was deemed the private driver for several reasons. 1, his wife worked for Moscow PD. 2, he was a university driver in the youth outreach program when he was the coordinator. This creates a so-called background to justify being an Uber driver. He was the perfect front, but due to Batman being interviewed, it created suspicion. It created a scenario where you have 2 people deemed the private driver, which is impossible. So this dark winter gray Prius or dark blue Prius or dark silver Prius, whatever, that vehicle needs to be tracked. Now, let's go back over that Law and Crime interview, and you guys tell me if this sounds like Eric Gower.
Quote, "The man who did not want his name used read the affidavit charging Brian Kohberger with felony burglary and 4 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Gonzalez, Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin." Okay, let's stop right here for a moment. This is the alleged private driver who was interviewed by Law and Crime. We have to reiterate this. He did not want to be identified, and he had read the affidavit. So would Eric tend to be someone else who had read the affidavit as someone else? Don't think so. The other interesting thing I noticed is Kohberger's name is highlighted. Xana and Ethan's are as well, but not Kaylee and Madison. In addition, they don't list Kaylee and Madison's first name, but they identify Xana and Ethan's full name? Might not seem like much, but there seems to be a distinction there. Quote, "I was surprised, but exceptionally glad that some form of resolution is forming. I feel exceptionally bad for those parents and our community." He is somewhat stunned to learn that Kohberger, who maintains he did not commit the murders, lived near him in Pullman. "He lived 1,200 feet from my front door. I spent 6 weeks trying to convince my wife there was not a threat, and I was wrong." He added that his wife still tears up walking their dog despite Kohberger's arrest. Yeah, so devastated. The driver spends much of his days shuttling people around town, so after the killings, he kept an eye out for the white Hyundai Elantra. He eventually spotted it at Kohberger's apartment building sometime after December 7th. Here we go again. The driver doesn't spend much of his time shuttling people around town because he works as a director at the University of Idaho. He got promoted several times from youth outreach coordinator to lead director. He resides in Idaho, is from Idaho, has stayed in several towns in the state of Idaho, not sure when he moved to Pullman, Washington, and had retired from being a director at the Oh, I'm sorry, I was referring to Eric. Don't know who this person is they're interviewing. Quote, "I thought it was too new," he said of the car, since Moscow police had asked the public for information about a 2011 to 2013 Elantra. However, wait, Moscow PD didn't know the make and model until around this time, being in December, but WSU campus police had already identified his vehicle. You know what? Not going back over all that again. However, he wrote down the car's Washington state license plate number and submitted a list of 13 or 14 Hyundai Elantras he had spotted sometime around December 10th through the Moscow police tip line. They already started tracking Kohberger. None of that matter. It was a frame, and Batman was in on it. But, more so, we can suggest he was in Moscow that night. Oh yes.
Yep. If everyone is on the same page here, this was a major problem in the case we exposed. Quote, I suspected from everything that I read that whatever happened in that house was exceptionally violent, far beyond what a scorned lover would do, in regard to the sheer violence, the driver said. Yeah, because a scorned lover is one person, right? Surely a scorned lover can take out their ex and 3 other housemates. Yeah. The murders have left Moscow residents in shock and created fear among college students who once felt safe leaving their doors unlocked and walking around. But the rideshare driver said things have changed, as women he takes home now ask him to stand in their doorway so they can check their windows and doors and look through their homes to ensure no one is there. Those are things that had never happened in the communities of Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington. Yeah, so it was so safe, like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, yet you were shitting your pants thinking about being robbed that night? He claimed that he didn't pull completely into the driveway because that's how people get robbed. It had never happened, but you never know. Paraphrasing from another article. So which one is it? Because if it's Eric Gower, then heck, everyone knows him in the neighborhood. He would be like a well-known driver for the college kids. So who put that fear in him to worry about being robbed? Yet in the same breath, it was so safe people left their doors unlocked? Oh, but it gets better. He goes from paranoid to powerful in split second. Let's put this in perspective for everyone to show how bonkers this guy is. Before the massacre, he's shaking in his boots, pissing his pants out of fear of being robbed in the neighborhood that he is well known in, by the way. After the massacre, all of a sudden he's fucking Batman, saving damsels in distress. Oh, so he's going to put himself in potential life-threatening situations now? You were just so scared to pull completely in the driveway not too long ago, and now after a brutal massacre, you're ready to protect some college girls? That's Batman for you, always ready to take out the bad guys. Remember, there was a dark-colored Toyota Prius the girls got into. Quote, after learning the names of the student victims, the driver said he went to Moscow police and provided a receipt showing he purchased fast food after dropping off Gonzalez and Mogan and told investigators about driving them home. Wait, wasn't it Taco Bell? We'll address that in a moment. Let's wrap this crap up. He said people online accused him of murdering the 4 despite police clearing him as a suspect. Oh, okay, that proves it. For some time afterward, he felt guilt because he had driven Mogan and Gonzalez home that night at 1:56 a.m. That was updated, my friends. It was originally 1:45 a.m. Only to learn days later that they had been killed. He questioned whether he had been followed or if he should have done something differently. He said that he had driven Mogan, Gonzalez, and Kernodle many times. Unquote. He said that he felt guilt. For what exactly? Context clues here. He felt guilt because he had driven them home that night at 1:56 a.m., only to learn days later they had been killed. Where's the guilt? What are you feeling guilty about exactly? Because you didn't make sure you weren't being followed? Why would you assume anything of the sort? It was a normal night, right? What could you have done differently that would have changed the course of that night? Let me tell you what this is. It's like those interrogations, where the suspect is blabbering nonsense, trying to convince the detectives that they would never harm a victim. Oh, I just feel guilty because I texted her earlier that evening and I should have texted later on to just check with her. Batman is creating an element of guilty conscience. But weren't you just the driver? Why would you? Oh, that's right. He felt guilty because he was supposed to go inside and check the home for intruders. Oh, that's where the guilt is coming from. Now I get it. Hey, if anyone in here thinking about doing something stupid, you better rethink that plan right now, or else you'll be pepper sprayed until your skin rips apart. Absolute trash garbage.
Which Taco Bell did Batman go to? Because Sunday morning, it closes at 3:30 a.m. He had a receipt in which he said it was shortly after 2 a.m. when he went to Taco Bell. As we pointed out, there's a Taco Bell on South Blaine and White Avenue. Now, some claimed that the white vehicle speeding down White Avenue was, get this, a Toyota Prius. We couldn't come to a conclusion after examining it a bit closer, but it's possible. Now, if that was in fact a Toyota Prius speeding down White Avenue around 3:45 a.m., then whose vehicle is this? And why were they speeding during a time frame where the murders initially were reported to have happened? We don't know who picked Kaylee and Madison up, to be honest, despite what the footage is showing. But here's something to think about. We broke this down prior. The path from the neighborhood to Taco Bell is about 15 minutes, so approximately 2 a.m. to about 2:15 or 2:20 a.m. Sure, but how do we know what time he actually left that Taco Bell, you see? He could have ordered around 2 a.m., but had been in Moscow for quite some time. Dylan texted him around 2:10 a.m. He said he was still driving, right? So he was still in Moscow, we assume. Wasn't it around 2:40 a.m. of when he went to Taco Bell, now that I think about it? Yeah, it was around 2:40 a.m., so if we just placed him at the Taco Bell on South Blaine Street, well, what did he do for about an hour to finally be spotted speeding down White Avenue at 3:45 a.m.? Again, that footage has never been released, only a craptastic screenshot. It was Batman, and they didn't dare release the footage because you could examine everything without craptastic editing. It has never been reported of whose vehicle that was, why the vehicle was speeding, where it was coming from, where it was going. The only thing that was reported was that it wasn't the vehicle in question. Awesome. Just rule it out without fucking ruling it out. There's a slithering snake trying to avoid being spotted, and we're cutting the grass. We know one thing for sure. The individual interviewed by Law and Crime pretended to be the private driver. Oh wait, let's rephrase that. The individual interviewed by Law and Crime posed as a private driver that night, and Moscow PD just covered it up by claiming Eric Gower was the private driver. Yeah, that's better.
Hold on. Then let's all think about another key point regarding that area. We're just going to assume Batman went to the Taco Bell in Moscow, not in Pullman. The most logical evidence to support this theory is everything we've pointed out so far, and in the previous episodes addressing this issue. There is a Taco Bell on Blaine Street, okay? Bingo. Since Batman was a so-called rideshare driver, surely he knew exactly where that Taco Bell was located. Blaine Street intersects with White Avenue, okay? Just follow along. As we pointed out, that vehicle is coming from that intersection. Since it's coming from that intersection, then it's likely coming from, that's right, Blaine Street. Now, since it's traveling northbound, where would it be coming from southbound? Here we go again, Indian Hills Drive, which intersects with Blaine Street. Remember, the reports claim Kohberger traveled westbound on Indian Hills Drive. And we pointed out, if he's traveling westbound, where the hell is he coming from eastbound? Notice they didn't have a point of reference anywhere in that area? It's because the same vehicle traveling on White Avenue is the same vehicle spotted on Indian Hills Drive. If it was Kohberger, they would have definitely added the gas station surveillance into the so-called evidence against him, but they ruled that vehicle out. The vehicle on White Avenue is coming from Blaine Street, and the path traveling southbound leads to the same path allegedly Kohberger traveled on Indian Hills. It's Batman! Left the area once things started to get shaky, then was notified about the murders, and sped back to the neighborhood. Yep, and you know what it makes the chaos ponder? Maybe the alleged Hyundai Elantra spotted in surveillance is nothing more than holographic technology. You can say AI, sure. They're making the AI videos appear more realistic with those grainy filters and such to make it seem more authentic. I wouldn't be surprised. They didn't release any of it before they had a suspect, yet they were asking the public for their help identifying a white vehicle, and sent out a screenshot of a white vehicle early in the investigation from gas station surveillance. If a crime is committed and a vehicle is involved captured by surveillance, that footage is dumped out as soon as possible. But they didn't do this. Guess they needed some time to, quote, fine-tune the footage. Linda Lane's footage was the only surveillance that was accessible to the public, and it was leaked out to the public. All the other footage that was considered damning evidence against Kohberger, it was never seen, until basically we all knew he was going down for the murders. In fact, we can even suggest the vehicle is not even white, perhaps it's silver. Anywho, we know Batman was involved.
What to make of this nonsense? With Batman in the middle of this, it almost makes you wonder if Batman is the stalker, right? Fits the description, knew where the girls worked, allegedly drove them often. Knew where they stayed? Review. Katie revealed the housemates used cocaine. Ethan was beaten in the rear parking lot of Queen Road Apartments around 2 a.m., which Moscow PD had to be in the vicinity at that time. Law and Crime interviewed someone claiming to be the private driver, who definitely wasn't Eric Gower, who was also deemed the private driver. You have an unmarked cruiser nicknamed the school car, which was a silver sedan, and Showalter claimed the girls were picked up by a silver sedan. A group of individuals are spotted jogging from the neighborhood around 3 a.m. A scream is allegedly heard soon after. A male left blood DNA behind on the stair rail. I mean, what the hell? Well, it's a frustrating job, but somebody's got to do it. This is the chaos sector.